In terms of John Mayer's guitar tones, the Search for Everything tour is what a lot of John Mayer fans would call a bit of a low point in terms of his tone over the years. It's not universally loved by everyone, and whether or not that's down to your opinion if it comes to the J-Mod amplifiers being used, no 2-Rock, or really no Dumble in the mix in terms of the amplifiers, or the Silver Sky starting to take over, it's just one that really kind of falls short for a lot of John Mayer fans and being not quite as special as some of the other eras we've seen, especially because it's also sandwiched between the Born and Raised in Paradise Valley era and then the 2019 World Tour as well. Two eras that had just incredible tones. So I think also just because of the fact that the tour sits in that kind of spot in between two really phenomenal sounding tours in terms of John's guitar tone, it's not quite as universally loved. But I do think there are some really incredible performances and some really incredible tones from the Search for Everything era. It's John. He never sounds bad. It's just what level of amazing the tone is and kind of where it falls. So I was talking with my friend Gabe the other day, and he mentioned it. He's mentioned this tone to me before as well, but this is kind of what we think is probably the best John sounded during the Search for Everything tour, and it's the tour debut of Changing Live on April 7th of 2017 in Philadelphia. Now, the footage here, as you guys are going to listen to, the camera was definitely struggling a little bit as it's right up against the stage getting blasted by John's amplifiers, but through the little bit less than ideal audio throughout the clip, you can hear John's guitar tone, and it is truly phenomenal sounding. And I think part of the reason why it sounds so good is because of the guitar that John was using, being the Todd Krause master-built Eric Clapton Stratocaster guitar. We've seen him use a decent bit kind of in the mid-early 2010s, but I think part of the reason is because of that guitar. Of course, John also used that for the outro solo recording of Helpless as well in the studio. So it's a guitar, especially for this time, we saw John using a little bit, but the fact that this is the guitar he used for the tour debut of Changing, I think is really awesome. And now let's take a listen to just some incredible sounding guitar tones from the Search for Everything tour. And I think even though the audio was struggling a little bit at times during the solo, you can still hear just how incredible John's guitar tone sounds. There's something definitely unique to this version, and I do think a lot of it has to do with that Eric Clapton Stratocaster that he is playing.
Go for that.
One other thing that's interesting is that this is April 7th of 2017, and at this time point, John was kind of experimenting with his overdrive setup for the Search for Everything tour. In the full kind of overdrive pedal history video I did, I discussed the different pedals we saw kind of throughout the Search for Everything tour and the timeline around that. But at the beginning of April, the Pete Cornish Duplex, being an SS2 and G2 dual 2-in-1 overdrive pedal, was added to the pedal board, and the Klon Centaur was on, it was off, it was on, it was off, and John kind of seemed to be experimenting with working in that as his kind of primary primary overdrive to complement the TS10, the Klon Centaur being on and off. I'm not sure exactly for this performance what was on the board, but we know at the time that is what John is doing. So the TS10 is for sure in the mix, and it's possible that it's either the Klon Centaur or one side of the Pete Cornish duplex or both, boosting John's guitar signal. That's most likely what is going on here in terms of the overdrives, just without having a dead-on shot of John's board for this specific show. I can't say for 100% certainty what it exactly is on the board, but because he was using the Bradshaw controller anyway, there's no way of 100% knowing exactly what is going on because he just has all of the pedals on a switcher and he just steps on the switcher with a label that we just cannot see. It's impossible for us to exactly know, but that's kind of the pedals that John had on the board there. As I mentioned earlier, we also have the two PRS J-Mod John Mayer signature amplifiers and then the Fender Dual Professional as well, creating the amplifier mix. Definitely a amplifier setup that, like I mentioned, I think a lot of people kind of attribute to perhaps the tones from this era not being quite as good as they were from the Born and Raised Paradise Valley eras, or then what we would hear from the 2019 World Tour as well. But this clip that we listened to, I think, is still proof that John does sound amazing during this. He did sound amazing during this tour. You just have to maybe dig to find some performances that really stand out to you in comparison from other tours where it almost is like every night he sounded just absolutely incredible. You guys get what I'm trying to say. John definitely didn't sound bad, but this certainly is a highlight from the Search for Everything tour that I wanted to point out for you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed kind of taking a look back at that tour and this clip. It only has 7,800 views on YouTube as well from the person who uploaded it. So there's a chance that you guys might not have actually heard this specific performance of Changing, so always fun to kind of introduce you to something cool, especially using the Eric Clapton Strat as well. Something very unique for this tour that John, I don't think really used more than a handful of times, if that. I think I've seen him use it just this once, if I'm being honest, and then that's it. So kind of cool to see some experimentation with different Stratocasters during this tour, of course, while he's road testing prototypes of the Silver Sky 2. But anyways, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.